Crying is often misunderstood as a simple overflow of sadness, but psychologically it is far more complex than that. It is one of the body's most direct ways of converting emotional pressure into physical release. When emotions build beyond what we can comfortably process in thought alone, the body steps in to express what language cannot. And in that transition from feeling to expression, crying becomes both a signal and a relief. From a psychological perspective, crying is closely linked to the brain's emotional regulation system. The limbic system, which governs emotions, becomes highly active during intense emotional experiences. At the same time, areas responsible for reasoning can become less dominant, allowing feelings to take the lead. This shift creates a state where emotion is no longer contained internally and begins to manifest outwardly. One of the key reasons crying feels like release is due to how the nervous system responds to emotional stress. When we experience strong emotions, such as grief, frustration, or even overwhelming joy, the body enters a heightened state of arousal. Heart rate increases, breathing becomes irregular, and tension builds in muscles throughout the body. Crying helps regulate this state by activating parasympathetic responses that gradually restore balance. Tears themselves also play a symbolic and biological role in emotional expression. They are not just water from the eyes, but are connected to stress-related hormones and emotional signaling. Some studies suggest that emotional tears may help reduce internal stress load by supporting physiological calming processes. Even without focusing on chemical explanations, the subjective feeling of relief after crying is widely experienced. Psychologically, crying is also tied to emotional acknowledgement rather than suppression. When a person cries, it often indicates that they are no longer holding back what they feel internally. This moment of surrender to emotion allows the mind to stop resisting and start processing. And that shift from resistance to acceptance is where emotional release begins to take shape. Many people experience crying as a breakdown, but in psychological terms, it can also be a form of integration. It brings together thoughts, memories, and feelings that may have been fragmented during emotional stress. Instead of keeping everything separated in mental compartments, crying allows emotional material to surface at once. This temporary flooding is followed by a gradual sense of clarity and emotional settling. Another important aspect of crying is its social and communicative function. Humans are deeply social beings, and emotional expression often serves as a signal to others. Crying can communicate vulnerability, need for support, or emotional intensity without needing words. Even when no one is present, the act still carries internal meaning about connection and release. The psychology of crying is also influenced by early life experiences and learned emotional behavior. Some individuals are conditioned to suppress tears due to cultural or familial expectations. Others are encouraged to express emotion more openly, leading to different comfort levels with crying. These patterns shape how easily a person accesses emotional release later in life. Interestingly, crying is not limited to sadness alone, despite common assumptions. People cry in moments of overwhelming happiness, relief, gratitude, or even aesthetic appreciation. This happens because the emotional system responds to intensity rather than just negative or positive labels. When emotional stimulation exceeds a certain threshold, crying becomes a natural output. There is also a cognitive aspect to crying that involves how the brain processes meaning. When something emotionally significant occurs, the mind attempts to interpret and assign value to it. If the experience is too complex or powerful to fully process, emotion can spill into physical expression. Crying, in this sense, is the body helping the mind process what it cannot fully articulate. Another layer of emotional release comes from the interruption of emotional suppression. Many people spend significant energy holding back feelings in order to function in daily life. This suppression creates internal pressure that does not disappear, only accumulates over time. Crying acts as a release valve, where that accumulated pressure finally has a pathway outward. The feeling of calm after crying is closely related to hormonal shifts in the body. Stress-related chemicals such as cortisol can decrease following intense emotional expression. At the same time, the body may release chemicals associated with comfort and bonding. This biological transition helps explain why people often feel lighter or exhausted after crying. Psychologically, crying also supports emotional processing by creating a pause in mental activity. During tears, people often stop overthinking and shift into a more embodied emotional state. This pause allows unresolved feelings to surface without constant cognitive interference, and in that space, emotional clarity can slowly begin to form. There is also a strong connection between crying and memory recall. Emotional memories are stored more vividly than neutral ones. Due to their intensity, when these memories are activated, they can trigger a full emotional response, including tears. This is why certain thoughts or reminders can suddenly bring someone to tears unexpectedly. Crying can also serve as a form of self-soothing behavior rooted in human development. From infancy, crying is one of the earliest methods of signaling distress and seeking comfort. As we grow older, the function changes, but the emotional mechanism remains deeply embedded. Even in adulthood, crying can provide a sense of internal comfort and emotional regulation. Another important psychological element is the reduction of emotional isolation through crying. Even when alone, crying can create a feeling of being emotionally witnessed by oneself. It acknowledges that the emotion exists and deserves attention rather than dismissal. This internal validation is often part of why crying feels psychologically relieving. Cultural attitudes also shape how crying is experienced and interpreted. In some environments, crying is seen as weakness, leading individuals to suppress it. In others, it is viewed as a natural emotional expression and is more openly accepted. These social frameworks influence whether crying feels freeing or emotionally conflicted. Despite these differences, the underlying psychological mechanism remains universal. Human beings are built to experience emotional overflow, and crying is one of its natural outlets. It is not a failure of control, but a recalibration of emotional equilibrium. The body and mind work together to restore balance when internal intensity becomes too high. There is also an interesting paradox in crying where vulnerability leads to strength afterward. While crying may feel like loss of control in the moment, it often results in emotional stabilization. This stabilization allows clearer thinking and reduced emotional turbulence afterward. So what appears as breakdown can actually function as psychological rebuilding. In relationships, crying can deepen emotional connection when shared with others. It reveals authenticity and trust, allowing people to witness each other's emotional reality. This shared vulnerability can strengthen bonds through empathy and understanding. Even when experienced alone, it can influence how we relate to others later. Ultimately, the psychology of crying is about emotional movement rather than emotional failure. It is the transition from internal pressure to external expression and then to release. It reflects the mind's need to process experiences that are too large to remain contained. And in that process, crying becomes one of the most human forms of emotional healing.